This is Robert Mardlanchi, the Mindshare Learning Report, Canada's Learning and Technology e-magazine. And welcome to this special CanAm EdTech MindShareTV podcast featuring Kevin Hogan, Content Director of eSchoolNews, as we reflect on 2023 and the year it's been. Thank you for joining me, Kevin, out of your busy schedule, final week of 2023.
Yeah, Robert, always a pleasure to speak with you. I always prefer it in person at one of the great EdTech shows, but this is better than nothing.
Absolutely. I miss you, buddy. Well, I thought I'd reach out to you and kind of reflect on the year. It's going to be embedded in our top 10 or 23 newsmakers of the year that we're going to incorporate this podcast. But first, I want to say a little bit about you and the leader that you've been as the content director at eSchoolMedia, a forward-thinking media executive with over 25 years of experience in building brands and audience and online and print and face-to-face, acclaimed writer, editor, and commentator covering the intersection of society and technology, especially in education technology, with a strong history of developing successful content distribution models, including websites, electronic newsletters, custom publishing, webinars. You've done a lot, my friend.
Robert, it's obvious that you got the check.
Obviously, and collaborative managerial style with a proven ability to create readership and communities. I almost feel like someone popped this into ChatGPT. Very well written. Speaking of which, it's a good segue to reflecting in some of the top trends that we've seen for this past year. But you mentioned your top 10 news stories, AI didn't even make it into it. Is that right?
Well, that's right. I mean, it's strange. Most of the conversations that I've had, on my podcast, I used to set an egg timer to see how long it is before someone says AI, right? I mean, it's taken the oxygen out of the room of any sort of conversation when it comes to the future of schools and really of our lives, for better or for worse. But yeah, now so we have eSchoolNews where we focus on K-12 technologies, and then we also have eCampus News, which focuses on the higher ed. So there's a lot of overlap there. But this is one case where I think there was a real kind of distinction between the two. AI in higher ed has completely taken over. I think when it comes to the K-12 areas, though, and as we were mentioning before we started the recording, we're still seeing, when we look at the algorithms and what people are reaching out for, the educators are looking for ways to engage students. And it really, I think, comes down to this period of post-pandemic that we're in. I mean, we see the continuing lagging assessment scores, which are unfortunate, really just lower than they've been in years. But there's another aspect of it as well, which is the emotional toll that the pandemic put on not only the students, but parents, everyone,
right.
But especially the students. So we see a lot of people interested in ways in which to engage the kids, and through technology or through techniques, through content creation, through the use of social media, through the use of things like TikTok, using technologies in a way which that benefit the kids.
Absolutely. And it's about the human connections. It's about HI, right? It's human intelligence as well as the connections that we so value and need. As human beings, we're, by nature social, right? So, there's no surprise that, there's such a pent-up desire for, tools that are focused on social emotional learning, for example. And we've seen the same thing in Canada. So, Canada, when I describe to, the EdTechs, the nuances that exist in Canada versus we're great neighbors, right? We so value our partnership and being neighbors to the north. But, we are unique in our culture, and there are nuances in our curriculum as well. So it doesn't always translate, and that's why we are able to kind of help figure that out for many of them. But it's never been a more exciting time to be in education, despite AI not making generative AI your top 10. It's certainly hit our radar to a great extent. And it is reminiscent of 1999, just before the dot-com crash, when back in the day I was leading the learning company business in Canada. Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary was our fearless leader, and Kathy Hurley was also part of that executive team, among others. And you know, we're just coming up to FETC 2024, and there's a lot of parallels, right? There's a lot of parallels. And then we saw a crash. So, you know, there is that caveat that, hey, you know what, buyer beware, and be ready. Like, don't jump on a trend if it's not real, and have, everyone's, you mentioned earlier, everyone's talking AI, but what do you mean by that? So
100%. Yeah, I mean, and when you look, I was not to date ourselves, but I too was back there in the late '90s covering the web and the emergence of the World Wide Web.
You must have been straight out of high school at that time.
Again, the check got to you. But that was, over the course of a number of years that kind of, you could call it the hype cycle, or you could call it just like whatever that evolution was. This time last year, there was nary talk about AI, and then in 12 months, it's something that's overwhelming, because I think there's so many different aspects of it. So I mean, you could talk about the instructional aspects of it, the pros and the cons, right? The worries about student teaching, but also the way it will totally advance the way we teach and learn. You have the administrative side of things, where the biggest story to come out of ISTE was the idea of a power school baking AI into its learning platform, Canvas the same way, building the AI into the learning management systems. I mean, so that's a big deal. And then you have the kind of the third wave of that, which is kind of the overall societal changes of what's going to happen through the use of this stuff. That being said, just like back in the late '90s, there was a lot of hype, and all of a sudden, maybe you had 500 .coms in 1997, and you had 1,500 2 years later. Not last summer, but the summer before, if you were walking around ISTE, you didn't see much of any AI. And now last summer in Philly, every EdTech company was an AI company, right? A lot of new posters were printed out, and people talking to different degrees of success on what that really means for their companies. So I think going forward next year, I think the hype will die down a little bit. I think you'll see the real roots of the technology work its way into software and systems and techniques, and it will become just maybe a little bit boring, which is a good thing. I mean, some days I wake up. Go ahead.
And transparent, right? Like, it's just when we discuss EdTech tools, it's we don't say we're using this tool, we just do it. It's like a toolbox. I need to fix something in my home or my car, and I pull out the right tool at the right time, as we are leveraging some technology here to enable us to do what we're doing right now in conversation. It's about, being transparent. And the reality is that, they're still figuring it out. The OECD just had a summit last week online. I shared on my LinkedIn one of the webinars around, the future promise of AI, and some really good, really important points to consider around safety and security, right? There's a lot of issues around that, and who owns the data when you're uploading content, etc. So, the walled garden concept around whether it's a district or an organization has a lot of potential when you're protected, right?
Right.
So it's still yet to be defined, but tremendous promise. And we use it every day, for various purposes. With our students doing our social media, our co-op students, they do a great job, and it helps them. If anything, it's helped my literacy and grammar. There's some words that I wouldn't normally use that pop up, and it's really up my word count in my daily word count usage. How about you?
Absolutely. But, it's definitely empowering, and the way to see that, in conversations I'm having with educators, at the very beginning there was a lot of fear, right? Oh, well, first of all, it's going to replace teachers, right? It's not going to replace teachers. Teachers
No.
are going to use it to their greater effect. Students are no longer going to be able to do their work. The fact is, it empowers them to do better work. And it may change the way in which we teach and learn, but you can say change or you can say improve. And it really kind of takes a lot. It's like spell check, or it's like Google. I mean, these are both technologies that came in and started to revolutionize the way that we interact and we study and we learn, and made those things that much easier. I mean, who needs a library card system anymore, right?
Absolutely.
It's another one. So it's kind of like, it's like Google on steroids in a way. It really can make all of our work and our learning that much more effective and efficient.
Absolutely. It was interesting. I was at EdTech Week, and I sat in a session at New York City schools. Initially, New York City schools banned any access to ChatGPT or what have you. And then at the event, fast forward 9 months, they were announcing that they were establishing an AI incubator, and I thought that was super innovative.
Yeah. I mean, good luck banning it. Like most technologies that come out that have an element of a fear to them, it gets banned, and then quickly realize like you can't ban it, and it's like banning water, right? Or banning electricity. Like, it's here, it's baked in. I mean, it's baked into Bing, into Microsoft Word when I use it.
Yeah.
It's there whether you like it or not. The key is how to use it ethically, and how to use it in a way in which the learning is not, you're not cheating. You're just kind of involved in research.
Refining, perhaps. Let's shift gears a little bit. ESSER funding. I have to think that must have made the top 10, or a significant story post-COVID was the massive funding that the government provided, the feds provided, to help bridge the gap and make up for the learning loss that was highly criticized. Where were you in that thought process around ESSER, and is it gone, or is it here to stay for a little while?
Most of our stories, most of our coverage looked at ways to remind educators and to remind administrators that you have to look towards the future, that there is a cliff there, that it is going away. And even while you have the money now, the technologies that you invest in, you're going to have to prepare your school boards for the fact that will be a continuing expense, but it won't be necessarily a continuing benefit, especially deciding, what's going to happen in less than a year here in the States on who's in charge of the Department of Education, or whether there's a Department of Education at all. We'll save that one for a different podcast. So while it's there, the important thing is to realize that you don't necessarily can think about it always being there.
Cybersecurity.
Always a top one. And that stayed as a top topic even during the depths of the pandemic, because what you saw was actually some behaviors where attacks on schools became more prominent during COVID. The school districts, and it didn't really matter the size of the district, because they would go after anybody. So that always continues to be the top of the worry list, I know, for administrators, specifically district leaders, and as well when it becomes a public story for the district, the public at large. Yeah, so that is always at the top of our list.
So one of the profs that I've interviewed many times, Dr. Steve Jordan's U of T psychologist, has his own EdTech company, talked about the great snapback post-COVID. And did you see that? Did teachers want to get back into the classroom and just be normal and not focus on all these great online tools and tech that they discovered? One-to-one computing became pretty ubiquitous. Then there was a bunch of callbacks on the tech, believe it or not. Some of the districts took back the tools that they gave these kids.
Yeah.
I know you're really unfortunate.
I mean, I'm here in New Jersey, and they kind of went back to an attempt to go back to where there's no remote options at all.
Wow.
And which I guess has been enacted, and I don't know how effective that is or how that improves things. But again, here in the States, you have 15,000 different school districts with 15,000 different agendas who are all, depending on what scale of progressive they are in terms of the use of technology. I will say that we've seen, and maybe our readership and our listenership are self-selected in that they're already passionate about education and technology. But I continue to talk with districts and schools who are keeping the stuff in place. They're using it. They found innovation in a time of need when the remote learning was necessary. High flex is a phrase that I hear in the higher ed space.
High flex.
High flex, yeah, which has been this idea of, as you're saying, like, we were forced into it, and now we can go back to what the old normal was, but more and more I see it's what we refer to as the new normal. So you take elements of the remote learning experiment, and you use the ones that work to your advantage. Interesting enough, I think there might have been more radical changes in school districts' back offices and administrative tasks than maybe necessarily in terms of classroom instruction. So the idea of document management, the idea of using online learning platforms, say like a Google Classroom, where teachers are uploading assignments, students are uploading their homework, having dynamics, those sort of things. You're not unplugging those. When the teacher and the student, and here's another one, the parent becomes more involved. I think one of the silver linings from the pandemic is that parents were brought in as teaching assistants during those first few weeks and months.
Excellent point. That's a really good parental engagement, and it's a huge success factor in a student's career, isn't it?
100%. And the use of these technologies enables the parent to become that more engaged on a daily basis. So, I mean, that used to be the default, right? You would have the back to school night, and then the only time you heard from a teacher is if Johnny was failing a class or there was a disciplinary problem. But now, because of these platforms and the ease of which a parent can communicate with the teacher, I mean, you jump onto a Zoom call, like much the way that we're doing. As a parent of 3 beta testers of these technologies over the past couple of years, I'm much more engaged in the work of my kids than I was pre-pandemic, because I can go up online. I've got my alerts. I've got the daily the daily updates, and it's just much more effective that way.
Well, they must think you're a cool dad with being in the EdTech space, and they should. They know that lean heavy on you for all that whiz-bang technology that you are up on, no doubt.
They're still coming and helping me as my IT support.
There you go. When you give kids agency, the sky's the limit, isn't that the truth?
100%. And it is exciting to see them react to the AI and see the students using these things. I mean, Jamie Cassett, the great evangelist who used to be at Google, would give a great speech about. He'd have everybody pull out their latest version of the iPhone and have them stare at it and say, this is the most primitive piece of technology that your student will ever remember. So the fact that where we are here, AI is not that big a deal to them. Even the fact that the way we're communicating, that's what they've always known. So, I mean, this is a baseline for them. So when you see things like augmented reality and virtual reality and a lot of these dynamics, which as an old guy and you keep getting older, I keep looking at it as this novel thing. It's all half of them.
Amazing. There's a lot of talk about the EdTech conferences and teacher supply shortages. You know, we're talking about a national conference. We just hosted our EdTech Leadership Summit in Ottawa. We'll have to get you there next year. We're back in Toronto next year after 15 years, going back to my alma mater, York University. Getting teachers release time. We're now thinking about a conference and having the teacher a portion on a Saturday, because that's a challenge to get release time. Thoughts on that?
Well, again, depending on the type of teachers that you're talking about. I know one show that I used to go religiously every year was BET in the UK, and they had a Saturday devoted specifically to educators. I think the professionals who go into the space, who care about their kids, they care about their mission, and they care about technology, and they're passionate about it. I think both giving them in-person and continuous online, you call it professional development, or which is access to resources, is essential, and that is certainly not going to go back to normal. I mean, I think there's more of it is necessary.
Where will you be in late January? Will it be FETC or will it be the BET conference? Or
it will. So now that they've moved it back on the overlap, I will be at FETC.
Excellent.
We have a lot of exciting conversations that are happening down there. We're hosting a dinner, I gave it a minute's thought about trying to hit both, but again, maybe in my old age, that didn't sound. Very
they haven't quite perfected that teleporting yet.
Exactly right.
You can perhaps use your virtual reality goggles and bring you there virtually. That'd be kind of cool. I think they almost should, right?
I'll send my avatar.
Oh, you're going to send your avatar and infused with ChatGPT, mindset of yours, duplicated.
Exactly.
What else excites you as you reflect back on the year going forward into 2024? There's so much coming at us, and we're immersed in it every day, right? So the average teacher, one of the fascinating stats that I shared at our summit in Ottawa was related to the ISTE research around the percentage of professors in faculties of education using technology to teach future teachers. 9%. The stat was 9%.
Yeah. Well, I think it definitely is. As far as I'm concerned, that the teachers teaching teachers with technology, the idea of everyone having a learning journey, right? I mean, and again, something else that maybe kind of sprung from the pandemic, were the use of online courses for adults, the use of online courses for studies outside of the traditional college experience, where you're talking about training, CTE classes, VOTEC sort of opportunities, master classes where you can learn cooking from Gordon Ramsay, even. But this idea that you can go online, and much in the way that I know anytime something breaks in my house, the first place I go to is YouTube to figure out how to fix it. We're all in this constant state of learning, and I appreciate the fact that we can go out and get this information at our fingertips. It's just a really positive force.
Absolutely. I'm incredibly passionate about CTE as as a high school student, I experienced I think they called it the trades back in the day. Now it's CTE or ComTech or Career Tech. Every student should be exposed to some form of it. And when our two high schools, the rival schools, merged because one burned down, the academic kids came over to the trade school, excuse me, that I was at. They had to add 8 auto mechanic courses, 8, because they all wanted to take it.
Yeah.
Right?
And now you can take it online
virtually.
Yeah, at a low cost. And I guess, I mean, that's actually when you're asking me about other things that were kind of top of mind. And again, something that is in the wake of the social upheaval of 2020 and 2021, and these ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and getting these technologies to communities that have been underserved before, to get those sort of education opportunities to kind of raise all boats, right?
Absolutely. I recall, there were 2 grade A classes. I was blessed with twins. So one was in one was in the other. One had a smart board, one didn't. And it was like now, when you look at it, it was like, it was treated like, well, they're the lucky ones. But now it's about equity. And so digital equity is very much a thing here in Canada as well, where everyone's advocating for access to the tools. Yeah. One of the interesting things, despite all this wonderful technology, we have co-op students, and I asked them, what is the biggest challenge? What are 2 or 3 of the biggest challenges you have? Well, a 5-year-old Chromebook, one of the high school students comes in with, accessing the internet that is unstable. This is 2023, and we're still, despite, and this is something the EdTechs need to be aware of, it is not bulletproof yet. The stability of internet accessibility, high speed, we still have not achieved to the extent that it's like electricity, accessing electricity. Is it the case in the U.S. as well?
I think very much so, and I'll assume when you're talking about on Canada's side, you have a lot of rural communities that still have difficult
a lot of rural
accessing. And same in the U.S. I mean, you got some rural spaces where it's just not cost effective for the companies to pull that cable all the way out.
Right.
There. So those are still common challenges. And then at the same time, in dense cities, and you have, again, pockets
urban
of underserved communities where they might have it and just don't know how best to utilize it. And that comes from comes from the school, and also it just comes down to behaviors and learned behaviors on how to use this stuff too. But again, on the good side of that, I mean, I think there has been a recognition of that over the past 2 years, and that hopefully will continue to be addressed.
Is that Title I funding? You've got funding that's sweatered for that. We don't exactly have that type of funding in Canada, which would be wonderful. But, so for the EdTechs, ask the questions. If you're looking to deploy a pilot, you need to ask the questions, whether it's an elementary, middle, or high school. What is your, bandwidth access like? Do you have one-to-one computing? Because if you want it to be successful, you need to know what the landscape is, and it's not always stable. And these poor kids with these devices that are archaic, 5 years plus, still trying to do their mission critical work and exams as well, and essays. So that's reality today.
In E-Rate here in the States, E-Rate is the big funder that continues, and that's been around since 1996. But then the rules and the regulations change, how you use the money change, the process can become complicated. And the Department of Education has a lot of stuff online, but it is also helpful to talk to experts and maybe find consultants who can help districts navigate those waters.
Thank you for that. Professional development. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about professional development and some of the challenges this past year and opportunities that exist, because it's still very much needed. There is so much of it available that's free, and teachers don't have the time. That's one of the appeals of generative AI, that in theory, it's going to remove some of the administrative tasks and give teachers back time to do real work with the students and perhaps some professional learning. What is that looking like?
Yeah, and that comes down to some of the fears that we talked about as well. Whether how accurate the technologies are being used to say, create a 7th grade science quiz, 10 pages of multiple choice. You ask ChatGPT to do that. Where has that content come from, right? I mean, where has it been, validated, so to speak? And that's where large language models and the idea of that walled garden, I think, can take away a lot of that fear. So when you see, a company like Merlin Mind, who are offering to create their own models for districts that can dump their own content.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense.
Right? And then once you have that created, that's a lot of the administrative duties in terms of creating lesson plans, putting together quizzes, tying those things in. Those are things that are happening at night after a full 10 hours of being in the classroom. That's where some of the teacher burnout comes in. So if we can use these tools in that way, so they become a personal assistant to whatever educator or whatever school or whatever class, and tie it to the curriculum, that's where you're going to see the benefits.
Are you seeing any? You referenced the one company in what they're doing. ISTE apparently was talking about Richard Collada at ISTE 23 talked about creating an AI tool for teachers. Have they come out with anything yet? What are you hearing or seeing?
There is a tool on the ASCD side of ISTE. I still haven't seen what the latest branding is of that yet, but yes, I mean, they were certainly taking their resources and putting it together to create an AI-assisted tool for teachers using their content. Most software companies now, or curriculum companies, are, if they haven't done it, they've at least used ChatGPT as a wrapper to keep around their content to help that come together. So that's an inevitability. Again, I mean, this is where it becomes kind of boring, so to speak, where it's just like it will become this tool that is used just like we use Google. No one oohs and ahs over Google anymore, right? You just Google it. But those first couple of years, you just play around with it, and you'd be like, I can't believe this. This is amazing.
Remarkable. It's fascinating. Yeah. Do you know that, we're releasing our top 23 newsmakers for 2023. So I popped the question in for the Canadian market. And last week, I was number 23 out of 2023. And then today, I was number 1. So I don't know what to make of it. So perhaps I'm somewhere in the middle, but I don't qualify as I'm, writing this report to be the top 23. I will not include myself. I promise. As my wife says to me often, it's not about you.
That's daily here.
She keeps me grounded. So before we wrap up, perhaps let's crystal ball gaze into 2024. What excites you? What do you see? What are you predicting the world of EdTech to be like in 2024? Are we going to see more AI? Are we going to see, the economy's kind of teetering? What's in store? Because the EdTech sector suffered immensely this past year from a investment perspective compared to COVID. There were some unicorns that were built over COVID, and now that's not the case this past year.
Yeah. Well, I've been in this in this game long enough to know not to make predictions.
Okay.
But I do express hopes, and I do hope to see, I mean, there is this massive acceleration of software development because of the generative AI and adoption. And I do hope to see that will continue apace. I don't see that lessening, and that enthusiasm I think is only going to gain as we go, and we continue to remove ourselves from this post-pandemic experience, which we're still kind of suffering the hangover from that.
Yeah.
I do see that there'll be a continued appreciation for educators and an appreciation for the profession, for the craft. And I think that hopefully we'll see that idea of the teacher burnout and the stress of that continue to dissipate, and for there be a sort of a renaissance when it comes to the use of the technology.
That's a good word, renaissance. Post bubonic plague was the Renaissance area that emerged, Renaissance era, I should say. We haven't kind of seen that. We kind of are stumbling our way out of this in combination with an economic correction. So I'm optimistic, like you, to see that now we're getting more laser focused and leveraging those incredible tools. But, I will say that with cautionary measures, because it's about the efficacy, and the EdTechs really need to nail down what impact they're making, and storytelling is the rage. So get your stories out there, have some successes, and replicate that, because we don't see enough of that, and there's some great ed techs that want to make an impact, but they're spinning their wheels oftentimes, they see, because they don't have that pedagogical expertise. Get that pedagogical expert on your team and tell those stories.
Well, that's really the mission. That's our mission here at eSchool Media, is to share those best practices, to share the efficacy and how people are using it effectively and correctly, and share it amongst our readers and listeners. So, I appreciate you letting me be here on as a guest.
Oh my God! Well, it's never. Thank you so much. We'll have to do this again, perhaps at FETC, and you can maybe have me on your show for a change.
That sounds great. Absolutely, I'm bringing my microphone.
Kevin Hogan, happy holidays. Thank you again for your time.
It was a pleasure as always, Robert.
That was Kevin Hogan, Content Director at eSchoolNews. My name is Robert Mertolacci, the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.MindShareLearning to get your latest issue. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and happy holidays to all.